Hello,
Hi, Ed.
here I
What's up?
am. Not too much.
Yeah?
Just just been working hard this morning. My wife and I are opening up our little summer camp that we have, and that's why I'm a little disheveled. But
It's all right.
but I'm here.
Yeah, yeah, cool, man. Nice to meet you. Thanks for
You
taking a minute
too.
out.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
You bet. Before we get into your life and what you do, and you're talking about setting up a camp, I want to know, how did you survive the last 3 years with COVID? How did you get through it? And how has it changed the way that you do things now?
I wrote a book, and I really missed the interactions with people that I normally would have. So I think the biggest change that has come about is I'm much more active about making uh, friends and contacting them more frequently.
Well, and the one thing that you're doing is, you're helping officers out, and a lot of attention, negative attention, happened over this COVID time period. Do you see that we're entering a better phase right now? Do you think things are getting better?
Yes and no. I have a very unique point of view when it comes to those issues. I really feel that the police officers that we have, just about all of them, are terrific. We have a few problem people. There's no question about that. I think where we lost our way was unintentional, was after 9/11, when we were coming off a renaissance of the 1990s of community policing, just blossoming all over the country, and crime rates were way down. The federal budget was giving money to police departments and communities to do projects, and it did turn into a competition to see who could come up with the better ideas. And then 9/11 came and all that money disappeared, and we went back into the defensive mode, the military mode. If you walk out on the street today and you look at a police officer, how they're dressed, it's no different than what a soldier looks like in Iran or Iraq or Afghanistan. They're protected to the hilt. They've got every imaginable weapon. There were no tanks in policing before that 9/11. And I'm not saying that all that wasn't necessary or a natural conclusion, but I think where we lost it was we lost that constant communication with the community, which is what you need when you have crisis. And I wrote about that in my book. So I think the officers themselves are fine. I just think it's the leadership needs to be looking at how they're going to present policing to the public and engage the public. I think that's where we really need to step it up.
So let's get to the essence of what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at a career day. And one of the kids looks up and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
I say that I'm a police officer and I'm very proud to be a public servant, because when I help people, that makes my day.
So when you were in the third grade, was that your dream to be an officer?
I came from that Irish background of police, politicians, and priests. So I think it was I wasn't thinking about it at the time, but by the time I got in high school, I remember it was on my record with the counselor, that I wanted to be a police officer. So yeah, it kind of, I didn't take the direct route. Let's put it that way.
So are you in Boston?
No, I'm in Fitchburg. We're about 45 miles west. We're a small urban city that's very diverse and has gone through a tremendous amount of change and is now emerging. Now that you talked about COVID, it's actually, things are emerging. We're actually turning the corner on crime has gone way down, and we're bringing an economy back to our city. So we're in a good period right now.
So let's go back to your childhood. Tell me where you were born and raised and how some of these seeds got into you to be an officer and to live this life of public service.
Yeah, well, I was born and brought up in the city, Fitchburg, and I also was brought up Catholic, and my mother was a very spiritual person, and we had a big family. I had 7 brothers and sisters, but we were very poor. We didn't have a lot, but I learned between my mother and my education that what I did mattered more than what I had. So I always had this altruistic feeling that if I need to sacrifice to help others, I'm going to do it. So that was my upbringing.
So talk to me a little bit about role models, heroes. Who's been kind of that person for you in your life?
That's a great question. I think probably my mother was a great model. My father was too, despite the fact that we had a love-hate relationship. I still admired him for the sacrifices that he made in his life. And I'd say my wife, probably.
So if you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now and spend a little time with them, get to know them, who would it be?
Someone who's alive or dead?
Well, we can do one or the other. I'm open.
I would definitely meet with Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
I've read many books on him, and the same theme is there. Always trying, making mistakes, but overcoming and doing the right thing. So,
The one thing about the way officers think, it reminds me a little bit of like an entrepreneur. There's this place in you that no matter what happens, you're going to overcome it, use it as experience, and move on. When in your life as an officer did you get to a point where running in or going into danger, you had to get desensitized and put it in its proper place so that you could function on a daily basis and it wasn't something that would inhibit you and what your mission was?
yeah, that's a great question, and I think it works differently for different people. Um, I'm going to give you an example, a real life example of, I think what you're talking about. When I was a young police officer, we were very poorly funded. The mayor and the police chief were fighting, and we had 45,000 people, and on Sunday morning, sometimes we only had 3 officers working, and you know, I getting a call on a Sunday morning where a shooting had just taken place, and I went to the house, went up the stairs to the house, and got in there, and people were all panicking, and a woman was lying on the floor, shot in the back, and tried to do CPR on her, and nothing. And then the ambulance is standing over me. The guys are saying, "Hey, let it go. She's gone." So I just kind of stood up, and a backup came finally after like 5 or 10 minutes. I was alone. So he said to me, "You okay?" And before I could even answer him, I got another call. Said, "You got to go to another house. There's a man locked in a bedroom with a gun. He wants to kill himself and his family. So go take care of it. No backups. Just go do it." So I remember going to the door. This was a totally different situation. This was a middle-class home. Walking in with a mother and daughter, screaming and crying, and going to the door, knocking on the door, and telling the guy I'm trying to talk to him, and he says, "Don't come in here or I'll shoot," and blah, 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 blah. And after 5 minutes, I just opened the door and walked in. And I could tell he wasn't going to do it. I just instinctively felt that. I went over to him and I took the gun away from him. And we took him up to the hospital and got him into a mental health program or whatever it was. But I think what happens, in answer to your question, is I don't think it's so much getting desensitized as it is getting experienced and wise. And I think that's where people don't get it with police officers sometimes, how valuable that is. That you can walk into a situation that's an explosion going on, literally, human or whatever, and you've got that ability because of that experience.
That's the thing that's always gotten me about this debate is that, at the end of the day, officers are human beings. No matter how strong and brave you are, you're still experiencing on a human level. And why
Mhm.
in the world would anybody get into police work to get to a point where they would do bad things to people? Like, I don't understand. There's a lot of different avenues that you could do. You could choose being a criminal if that was your thing, and you could do that. So why would someone pick a profession that would be serving the public in a noble place where obviously these days there's so much with body cams and scrutiny going on? Why in anybody's mind would you do it if you felt like you wanted to go out and do it in a bad way? But I think these stories that you're saying right now about taking the gun away from him, these are stories that people need to hear more often. They need to feel the humanization of something that I think it's demonized by the media.
Yeah, I think that some people, one of the things that the public does or doesn't understand, I don't really know. But when I first came on the job, we had a lot of bad apples. And I'm talking 1980, okay? And they were on the job. The last thing they wanted to do was their job. They were into all types of corrupt things and doing things like that. And I remember being shocked, like, this is what policing is? And what I've learned, being a police chief and all that stuff, is that that was a culture. All right. And I think what's important when we look to the future is we have to guard that culture and don't let that happen, because good cops come in and they become that. They get tremendous peer pressure. I remember coming on the job. I had a sergeant that I had a woman that was overdosed on an 11 to 7 shift, and I'm calling the ambulance. And this guy ends up being a sergeant. He walks over and he pulls up the girl's blouse and says, "Nice tits, huh?" While she's passed out on the floor.
Mm.
And this guy was the senior guy on the shift. Okay. So it's a culture.
Yeah.
People don't come on rotten, so we need to guard that very carefully.
The one thing I remember, over the last few years with lots of debates going on was that there would be these videos that people would shoot of a officer stopping and playing ball, like a white officer playing ball with a bunch of, African American, Hispanic kids, and it was a heartwarming moment. What were some of the moments in your life that maybe you remember as an officer where it was unscripted, no one really knows about, and you were like, you know what? I'm going to go in and I'm going to be in my capacity, but I'm also going to be a person. And we're going to have a moment.
I think there was a lot of that going on, not just me. And what happens when you come on the job, and I think it's still true today, you gravitate towards the officers that are like you. There's a saying that says, we look for ourselves in others. And I believe that's true.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, you're working in a neighborhood and you see something, the kids are doing certain things and you see that they need a basketball hoop or something like that, right? I mean, you can call City Hall and ask them to do it, but you know how that works. But if you come down on a Saturday, you dig a couple of holes and you put the thing up and the guys chip in or something like that, that's common. It's not uncommon.
Yeah.
Cops do a lot of stuff like that.
So what is the ultimate motivator for you? What's been the motivator for you through your career and even up to now? What gets you out of bed? What gets you saying, I'm going to do this?
Well, I think it's seeing other people succeed and grow. That's always been the most satisfying thing for me. And I've been so fortunate. I've been in positions where I've tried to do that. I have a saying that the best use of power is to give it away. And I truly believe that.
So if you had a dream tonight, you run into the 20-year-old version of yourself, and you could use the wisdom that you've gained in your life, the things that you've experienced, and you can impart that wisdom onto your younger self. What would you tell that young version of you?
I would say to follow your gut instincts. Oftentimes, and I think it's even true today, that when you become a police officer, you're still an individual, and you have to be able to discern or work on discerning the right and the wrong in life, because you could run into a lot of gray areas in this job too. And you have to be able to ask, yourself, is this really what I want? And then the other thing is, I remember when I was in the police academy 100 years ago, and this was before we had domestic violence laws. And I remember them telling us that, if you go to a house and a guy beats his wife up, and you get there, you can't do anything about it, because we were English common law that says a man's home is his castle, and basically they can throw you out. And I went through that, people throwing me out because couldn't do anything. And I knew intuitively inside, when I heard that in the police academy, that's wrong. Okay. So that's what I'm trying to say. I'd say to myself, just, trust your instincts, trust that upbringing that you had, trust those feelings that brought you into the job.
The one thing too about being an officer is that you're a unique specimen where you're fast tracked to see the injustices and cruelty that this world can dole out. How have you spent your life relegating the idea, even in a spiritual sense? You grew up, Catholic. Have you gotten to a point when you're in your life where you've made sense of the evil and the good, and finding that middle, or finding that balance to say, all of it makes sense?
Yeah, I think, first of all, what you're saying is, to me, is describing what you have no control over. So I think that goes back to what I had just talked about. Even today, the political climate today is so crazy. And I've gotten to the point now where if I don't agree with another person, so what? Or if they don't agree with me, so what? They're just as important a human being as I am. So don't let, opinions and feelings get in the way. And if there's bad behavior out there, do what you can to correct it. But I overall think that human beings are positive people for the most part. And I think, even in this country, whenever there's something that goes wrong, this country steps up like big time to help, and so we got good people.
I remember I used to run United Way campaigns, and the first time I ever really ran one, they used to say that people that don't have any money donate the most, and that's striking. That right there is a testament to what you're saying. People understand what it's like to struggle, and those that don't will give. It's amazing. Just
Yep.
speaks to the testament of the human condition and the will for us to be good. Of all of the things that you've accomplished and done in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Um, there's been a lot of opportunities and successes, but I think probably because it's, the principle of recency comes to mind. When I was working in the country of Moldova, which has been in the news a lot lately because of the war in Ukraine, I went over there and I worked there for 3 years for the United States government, and I was the police advisor, international police advisor, to help them, their police departments, transfer to a more democratic style, because they were a Soviet system at one time. And there was a massive amount of corruption when I got there. And I remember being hired to do the job. And when I got there, the ambassador telling me they're all corrupt, you really can't work with them. And I'm like, what am I doing here? So I had to start from scratch. I had to find out who were the good people, who were the bad people. And one of the things I found out was there were a lot of women police officers. And just like in societies, but especially in those societies, women don't have the same rights as men, which also means that the women in the policing were not as corrupt by any means. And they weren't thieves. They didn't steal. So I decided to pour a lot of money into developing the women police officers. And then I also worked with the women NGOs that were there on domestic violence and things of that nature. And I ended up meeting the new chief that they had in, and he was very supportive of me doing all that work. And, you know, when I got there, we used to do polls regularly with the embassy. The favorability rate of the police department was 21%. And when I left, it was 56%. And the good news was, after I left, this was in 2000, they elected a woman to be president, who's a Harvard graduate. And she's been doing a great job since she's been there. And she picked one of the women that I worked with regularly to be the Minister of Internal Affairs, an uncorruptible woman. So now that they're in this war with Ukraine and everything, and there's a lot of division in their country, but they got honest people in charge right now, and they're going to make the right decision. So I have a little pride in that. So
yeah, for sure.
Do it.
Yeah. So everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, colleagues, everyone around you sees you in a different light. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm an anomaly. And I only say this because it is what it is. I don't say it to brag or anything, but I have 5 college degrees. I've worked in so many different countries. I've been a police chief in 2 cities in the United States. I have tremendous international experience working in different countries. I spent a year in Egypt. I worked in Sweden, Portugal, all over. And I think that experience, boils down to give you some skills and gifts that other people would never have, because they've never been exposed to get those things and to see things with a different point of view. That's why even today, I'm not into punishment. I'm into what we call restorative justice. That's a whole nother show. But the point I'm trying to say is that I am a systems thinker, and the system that we have now that locks up more people than any other country in the world and does lock up minority people at 5 times the rate of white people is a very bad, broken system. And it's not because police officers are bad people. It's because the system, the police are just a reflection of the people in the community that you live in.
Yeah.
And we need to have leadership that's going to turn around and speak out and say, this doesn't work. We got to come up with a better way.
Well, I've only talked to you for a little bit, but I can tell your intellect, your compassion, your humanity is a very wonderful combination, and bodes you very well. It's been great to hear the story, but I got to know, I'm in Kansas City. I see the Patriots sweatshirt. I gotta ask you this, okay? Hold on now. I got to do it with a straight face. Are you mad at Tom Brady?
No.
Okay.
No.
Just want to dispense it. Every time I see a Patriots, I'm like, because we've chased that for so long, and it's like finally we're tasting what that champagne is like here. But I gotta wonder, because I know Tom's coming back this year and he's going to get commemorated at Foxborough. But yeah. I just wanted to know if there's one person out there that's like, you know what? I'm really pissed at that dude. I'm getting over it, but I'm pissed.
No, it's funny you say that, because I love Patrick Mahomes. He's my favorite. No.
Oh.
And he kind of came in as Brady was going out the door. But Brady brought all kinds of championships here. I mean, you can't be spoiled rotten.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. I will tell you one thing. Living in Kansas City my whole life, I was at the NFL draft. Didn't know how it was going to materialize, but I got down by the stage. I couldn't believe that it was this town. We have the trophy. Everybody's ecstatic. It's a big show. And I was with the guy that's a Patriots fan, and he just looks over at me, because we were there for the last pick. And I kept debating, is it more important to be here for the first one or the last one? Because the crowd was thinner. It just made more sense. And he looked over at me and he said, you realize Brady was picked in this low end, and we were in the 7th round. That's amazing. I don't know that people are cognizant of that. They probably think that there's a level of golden boy, but that dude had to fight and get where he got.
Right. I think he only had 1 year starting in college too.
Yes.
So
Oh,
he's just one of the guys that believed in himself and got the right opportunities and did it.
I mean, that's the thing. And in your line of work too, you probably saw miracles all the time. There's always miracles when you just least expect it.
Yeah, there's this thing I learned about when I was studying for an exam about, it's called, and I don't know if I'll say it right, but tertium quad. It's a Latin phrase. And it means that third thing, that when you're in the middle of something and it seems there's only one way to go or the other, something else presents itself. And that's true in life. It's
Yeah.
it's very true.
For Kansas City, it was Patrick Mahomes.
He's fantastic. I love him. And I think he's a great guy too.
He is too. Yeah, he is a very cool. He's doing so much good here. I mean, they're building stadiums. Him and Brittany are building stadiums. I mean, I took my son, he's 18, he has special needs. I take his friends down to a playground that he built. Like, I mean, the level of what he's doing to give back and just being a grounded, cool dude, it just adds to it, you know?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Ed, if anyone wants to learn more about you, find out about what you're doing, anything in your world, where can they go?
I have a website, www.justpolicing.org, where I also have my book, Just Policing, My Journey to Police Reform. And my contact information is there. And thank you.
Ed, man, thank you so much for opening up your world. More power to you. Best of luck with everything. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're a pro. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Nice to meet you, man.
You too.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.